And I'm not taking down that tweet or acknowledging that my tweet violated the Twitter rules. Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
We'll see who cancels who.
Yeah, Jordan, my dude, you're coming across as a little neurotic here, embodying the archetype of the wartime villain, if you know what I mean.
Establishing video uplink.
It is impossible to talk with you. You have departed from the sphere of reason and reasonable discourse. You have departed from the realm of the rational. This means that you have become deranged.
Well, I don't want to be deranged, and so I think it's about time that I figured out my issues by taking Peterson's personality test.
We're here with psychologist and best-selling author Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Well, we just talked a little bit about personality differences, and I have a website, understandmyself.com, that enables people to go. It takes about 15 minutes, and you can assess yourself on the canonical big 5 traits: extroversion, neuroticism, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness. And then each of those is broken down.
So those traits are sort of well established.
They're very well established, cross-culturally.
Right.
Yeah, and they were discovered statistically. They're not ideologically tainted.
Not ideologically tainted, you say? Well, we'll see, bucko, because I'm going to compare Peterson's test with other personality tests. But first, let's get a bit more precise on what Understand Myself is. In its own words, the Understand Myself assessment and report is based on the Big 5 aspect scale, the scientific model that describes your personality through the Big 5 factors and each of their 2 aspects. So it's somewhat of a white label, right? Well, more than less, yes. The Big 5 aspect scale was developed in the 1980s as a suggested model or grouping of personality traits that by the 90s had settled on 5 broad factors, including openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, with each of these 5 factors being further divided into 2 aspects. So, for example, the factor of neuroticism includes the aspects of being sensitive or nervous and resilient or confident. Okay, but why would one want to take the test? What's the benefit?
It's very useful because you need to know who you are, partly to know what your faults are going to be, what you might need to work on. So, for example, if you're extroverted, it's very hard to spend any time by yourself. And if you're introverted, people wear you out. And if you're a disagreeable person, then you're blunt and harsh and rather judgmental, but very critically minded. And if you're compassionate, well, then people can take advantage of you.
And that alone sells it for me. Knowing yourself, understanding yourself, is one of the most valuable and priceless things you can have. Knowing your strengths will allow you to utilize your greatest assets, and knowing your weaknesses will enable you to dampen them before they cause your ruin, or at least you'll have a higher chance of preventing a downfall. I love this. I think this is wonderful stuff. In my early 20s, I found out by using the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or 16 Personalities test, that I am an assertive logician, and this knowledge did, and still does, benefit me profusely. It's genuinely astounding how accurate that test is at describing especially my negative traits. But while the 16 Personalities test will come up a bit later, it's not the star of the show. No, it's Peterson's Understand Myself. But before we turn our full attention to it, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Surfshark VPN. By now, you're likely well aware of the many benefits of a VPN. They protect your online privacy, enable you to expand the range of movies, series, and documentaries you can watch on such services as Netflix. They can save you money by helping you avoid geographic price discrimination. And in the case of Surfshark VPN, they even provide an antivirus and protect your identity with data breach monitoring. Surfshark VPN has kindly teamed up with me to offer my subscribers, you, an 82% discount with 3 months free. Yep, you heard that right. If you click the link below, you can get an 82% discount with 3 months absolutely free. Couple this with their 100% money-back guarantee for your first 30 days, and it's simply a steal. So if you fancy watching some shows that only air in different countries, then here's a really easy way to do it. And guess what? As far as the assessments I'm about to take are concerned, I'm in Australia, courtesy of Surfshark VPN. And with that, let's get back to the assessments. The first distinction between Understand Myself and other assessments based on the Big 5 is that whereas most of them are free, such as big5test.com and big5aspects.com, Understand Myself costs $10. And since I'm going to compare all 3 of the aforementioned, let's give them clear names. We'll call Understand Myself simply Understand, Big 5 test, and Big 5 aspects. Hopefully this will clear up confusion. And when I reference each, I'll have their logo up top. Now, the second difference is that while free versions allow you to retake the test, Understand doesn't. They justify this on account of attempting to ensure that your results are as similar as possible to the comparison group, and to prevent you from biasly retaking the test after becoming aware of how it functions. Upon clicking Start, Test gets straight into the questions, whereas Aspects wants to know your age and sex, and Understand wants to know your age and gender. Now, the way the assessment works is by expressing statements and getting you to rate each statement from very accurate to very inaccurate. Understand makes this clear up top, whereas the others assume that you'll know this without explanation. So that's definitely a pro for Understand, at least by my lights. The first statement for Understand reads, seldom feel blue. Aspects reads, rarely feel blue. And Tests reads, worry about things. Now, I don't want to nitpick, at least not too much, but unless I'm mistaken, the word seldom isn't really used that often today. But yes, I seldom or rarely feel blue, and I am now going to go through each assessment, but don't worry, I'll only share with you the highlights so that we can get to the juicy stuff a bit quicker.
What time is it? It's test time. What time is it? It's test time.
Follow a schedule. Well, it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday right now. No, I do not follow schedules. I do what I want. I'm chaos. Avoid philosophical discussions. Oh yeah, I avoid philosophy just as well as I avoid drink, food, and sleep. Strong personality type. Yep, I think that's fair, and, well, sometimes to my detriment. Get angry easily. No, I do not get angry easily. Even when I do get angry, I get angry simply for dramatic effect. I'll repeat, I am not deleting that tweet. Feel others' emotions. With my hands? Respect authority. Waste my time. Now that's an interesting one, because does playing video games count as wasting my time? Some would say it does, it's a form of procrastination, whereas I think that I need downtime in order to be good at the things I want to do. And my downtime, I just choose to do it on video games. So I wouldn't say that I'm wasting my time when I play video games. Maybe there's been times in my life, in fact there has been, where I have wasted my time using video games, or I may even use the gym, it doesn't really matter what it is, but no. Can be stirred up easily. No, I'm not deleting that tweet. Comfortable with myself. Yep, warts and all, I've learnt to love myself over the years. And you should too. Seldom get lost in thought. No, I get lost in thought all the damn time. And I should just say that for the aspects assessment, they use rarely instead of seldom again. That's the main difference I'm noticing so far. I've literally walked into lampposts because I'm debating in my head Zeno's arrow or something along those lines. I'm filled with doubts about things. Well, no, not really. I'm broadly positive. I'd actually describe myself as a positive nihilist when it comes to a lot of things. I know that seems like an oxymoron, and specifically in the context of Peterson it probably sounds like it's impossible, but I could just redefine nihilism to mean ice cream. I mean, he redefines religion to mean acting out, so touche. Get upset easily. I've told you, I'm not deleting that tweet. Believe I am better than others. Yeah, broadly. I'm pretty certain that most of us think that we're better than others, but remember, you got to answer these honestly, otherwise you're not going to get a decent result. Like order. I'm just glad that you can't see the rest of The Office. Inquire about other people's well-being. Well, I think that the British have a disadvantage here, because we, as a greeting, will say, hey, how are you doing? Which I've learned Americans tend to take as a genuine, please actually tell me about your constipation. I love you really. We've got differences though, and one of them is that we have as a greeting, how are you doing? Rarely get irritated. I am not deleting that tweet. Lack the talent for influencing people. You tell me. Keep others at a distance. Yeah, if they've got like a religious symbol around their neck, I might, stay away. Rarely feel depressed. Sorry, don't you mean seldom feel depressed? Alright, I'm being a bit of a knob now. But no, seriously, why have they replaced rarely with seldom twice? Do they think that there's a different connotation or something? Maybe there is, I don't know. I don't know at this point. But no, I very, very, very rarely, very seldom feel depressed. Sympathise with others' feelings. It's a big yes, but if I can see a way that they can solve their problem and they're not doing it, it will just drop off a cliff, my sympathy. I don't like it, but I do, it's just who I am.
Keep my emotions under control. Well, it depends on the tweet, doesn't it, woke overlords?
Now this is a very interesting one. Can talk others into doing things. Well, you see the subscribe button below? Why don't you click it? And then there's a bell. Don't know if it does anything at this point, but click that and you'll be reminded of my content. And I have a Patreon if you want to check that out. And I have a game that you can buy.
How many more minutes left in the test?
The test is over.
Okay, well, that was fun. Now, here's the question. Having responded to all statements from understand and aspects exactly the same, and responding to tests as closely as possible due to the wording being a little different, have I got pretty much the same result across all three? No, definitely not. There's huge differences. For instance, according to aspects, my conscientiousness is 21 out of 100, but according to understand, it's 41 out of 100. That's a massive difference. And while aspects has my agreeableness at 7 out of 100, understand has it at 26, which is over 3 times higher. But if you think that's intense, check this out. Test has my agreeableness at 97 out of 120. Indeed, whereas the former two assessments consider me low in agreeableness, the latter considers me high in agreeableness. Now, as for why there are such differences, there are multiple reasons. For one thing, understands and aspects breakdown of each of the 5 traits is very different to tests. To take one example, neuroticism is a measure of general sensitivity to negative emotions such as pain, sadness, irritability or defensive anger, fear and anxiety. And understand and aspect break this trait down into the 2 aspects of withdrawal and volatility, whereas test breaks neuroticism into the 6 aspects, that being anxiety, anger, depression, self-consciousness, immoderation and vulnerability. A second reason for the wildly different results is how each test defines the aspects that make up each trait. Test states that someone high in trust, a subset of agreeableness, assumes that most people are fair, honest and have good intentions, while someone low in trust sees others as selfish, devious and potentially dangerous, and so test presents high levels of trust as broadly a good thing. Whereas understand and aspect speak of trust in both positive and negative terms, saying that those high in agreeableness are compliant, nurturing, kind, naively trusting and conciliatory. Test also speaks of morality when discussing agreeableness, stating that those high in morality see no need for pretense or manipulation when dealing with others and are therefore candid, frank and sincere, whereas understand and aspects don't mention morality at all. But in other areas, all 3 are pretty similar. All are scolding, for instance, when speaking about those low in the agreeable subset of cooperation. A third reason for differing results is that understand depicts information as a percentile, and aspect evidently does the same, though it's not crystal clear, but tests is simply a numerical result. And to give one last consideration for the dissimilar results, each assessment has different data and different methods of comparison. Understand specifies this in its FAQs, expressing that they compare you to 10,000 other males and females of wildly different ages, and notes that if instead it compared you to the same sex and age, your results would be different. This would explain, at least to a degree, and to give just one example, why it scored me significantly higher in agreeableness than did aspects. The one solid takeaway from all this is that if someone asks you if you're high in agreeableness or low in neuroticism or what have you, you should answer by saying that it depends on the assessment. Now, before we delve further, because there's more to say, I'll quickly share my results, as I know that I'd be mildly annoyed if another content creator didn't share the results. So, here they are. When it comes to agreeableness, understand places me at the 26th percentile, and aspects places me at, presumably, the 7th percentile. So, both are very low, meaning that they have me down as being not so nice, with a tendency, or potential, to be stubborn, dominant, harsh, skeptical, competitive, and, in the extreme, even predatory. But here's the thing. I'm not stubborn. You're stubborn. Woke moralists. Test, on the other hand, considers me high in agreeableness, and especially in the subsets of trust, morality, altruism, cooperation, and sympathy. When it comes to conscientiousness, Understand yielded a 41st percentile, considering me typical or average, and Aspects gave me a 21st percentile. They both describe this trait as a measure of obligation, attention to detail, hard work, persistence, cleanliness, efficiency, and adherence to rules, standards, and processes. To the contrary, Tess gave me a high score of 101 out of 120, and describes the conscientious trait differently, stating that it concerns the way in which we control, regulate, and direct our impulses. And it gave me a particularly high score in the subsets of self-efficiency, dutifulness, achievement striving, self-discipline, and cautiousness, but average on orderliness. In regards to extroversion, all three consider me high, and to be honest, I don't really agree with them. I think that the Myers-Briggs assessment is closer to the mark, putting me a tad into the introverted side. I function pretty damn well in social events, but it doesn't follow from this that I don't like or prefer time with myself. Understand and Aspects describe extroversion as a measure of general sensitivity to positive emotions such as hope, joy, anticipation, and approach, particularly in social situations, placing me in the 84th and 76th percentile respectively. Tess defines extroversion as being marked by pronounced engagement with the external world, and scored me 88 out of 120. For the trait of neuroticism, which Understand and Aspects define as a measure of general sensitivity to negative emotions such as pain, sadness, irritable or defensive anger, fear, and anxiety, and Tess defines as simply the tendency to experience negative feelings, all three scored me exceptionally low. I'm in the 2nd percentile according to Understand, in the 4th percentile according to Aspects, and I scored 31 out of 120 according to Test. This would explain, for instance, why I can talk about extremely difficult topics calmly. And last but not least, we have openness to experience, which Understand and Aspects defines as a measure of interest in novelty, art, literature, abstract thinking, philosophy, as well as sensitivity to aesthetic emotions and beauty. And Tess describes as a dimension of cognitive style that distinguishes imaginative creative people from down-to-earth conventional people. Understand put me in the 85th percentile. Aspects put me in the 88th percentile, and Tess gave me 92 out of 120. So all three consider me high in openness to experience, and they all scored me specifically high in the intellect aspect, as opposed to the openness aspect. Alright, so there's my results, and yes, feel free to roast me in the comments. But with that, let's turn our attention again to analysis. While the results from all three assessments let me know which aspects I rank high and low in, none of them offer a meaningful way to utilise this knowledge. None of them offer any path forward to improve myself, to better understand these aspects. Now, it's true that Peterson offers a program to help utilise the insights of this assessment, but you'd only know this by following Peterson. Understand doesn't make this clear at all, presumably because it's a group project, it's evidently separate. Fair enough. This is in contrast, though, to the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which, in addition to more clearly stating your personality type's strengths and weaknesses, upsells a premium account that includes tons of insight into your personality type, even offering exercises that, at least in my experience, have been pretty useful. And I compliment the Myers-Briggs type indicator not to put the other assessments down, of course, but simply to share my preference and experience. Truth be told, there's tons of criticisms that can be, and have been, levied at basically all personality assessments. To scratch the surface, they're criticised for being based on self-reported data, which can be biased and unreliable. They're accused of being overly reductionist, since they try to simplify human personalities into just 5 broad categories in the case of the Big 5 aspects, or 16 personalities, in the case of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Yet another criticism is that they tend to be based on insufficient demographic data. If the research is conducted in the Western world, then the results are going to be skewed towards Western culture, right? I mean, who precisely constitutes Understands 10,000 people? Maybe the demographic is vast, stretching into the Middle East and India, etc., but maybe not. One thing is for sure, though, the comparison group is a vital consideration. And a final criticism, at least for now, is that these assessments are limited in scope, only measuring surface-level personality characteristics and not taking into account the deeper, more complex personalities of people. But Anyway, if you want my honest thoughts, then despite all of these issues, the mere fact that these assessments encourage people to reflect on their positive and especially negative traits is a massive win. I've seen plenty of people get really good use out of these assessments, and while I personally have got more out of the Myers-Briggs type indicator, I know others that have got more out of the other assessments. At the end of the day, for some people, including myself, these assessments can be really insightful and incredibly valuable. So they get a massive thumbs up from me. But what about the ideological tainted comment that Peterson made?
They're not ideologically tainted.
Ideologically tainted.
Is understands results ideologically tainted? Well, unlike the others, they mention gender and sex quite a bit, even when differences are minuscule. But I'd say no, not particularly. It's not clear to me, though, as Peterson insinuated, that the others are somehow ideologically tainted. This, I'd have to see more information. It's one of those claims that Peterson makes where he just throws it out and there's nothing tangible to be able to bite onto. I mean, maybe we could say he was in an interview, so I don't know, but it's just Peterson again. There's going to be a Mott and Bailey involved, I promise you. Anyhow, as always, thank you kindly for the view, and an extra special thank you to my wonderful patrons and YouTube members. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.